we have this illusion of security or these false certainties in that external world, and to walk away from all of that, not knowing what's on the other side, you really have to risk it all to see what's beyond. And I think, curiosity is kind of what, stokes that fire of courage that allows us to cross that threshold into the unknown.
Wow. So let me, wow. I usually will have asked questions for those of you who sometimes say, why do you wait so long, Yvonne, to ask? It's because number one, there is an experience that you can have when you listen to our incredible guests, where you pay attention to the transmission beyond the words. And second, if you can feel, oh my gosh, Kristina, I've been writing notes. The language of Kristina is, I was walking with her in New York. I was going through the whole story. It really enrabled me. It seduced me into actually feeling that child, and then seeing the apple of New York City. How they call them the apple, something like that, right? It brought me to
Big
Eve,
apple.
Adam and Eve. Oh, the big apple. I was thinking, oh my gosh, how did Kristina, defeated the demons all that are in the big apple? Kind of, it took me to a biblical path, right? Like, unbelievable. What I just experienced was like a mysticism, right? However, I do want to go back into what you say and highlight a couple of things that you've been sharing. I love that little Kristina, was aware of the power of curiosity. And I love how little Kristina, for some reason, there's a moment in her life in the midst of this overstimulation, right? That is so strong for the nervous system of a child, right? The sensory integration system, trying to integrate in big cities. I was raised in Mexico, and it's crazy. It's crazy the amount of work that our central nervous system has to do just to adapt to a fast-paced society culture that doesn't know how to stop. And it amazes me that little Kristina, in her infinite intelligence, whatever the challenge, the navigation, as you said, right? Like from empathy, the very empathic child, you were able to navigate your boat in the midst of storms and challenges to mastery, to keep the curiosity open, to actually, begin to frame the story. I'm so impressed how you actually shared just what you just shared. You walked me through the whole hero's journey. The beginning is the dark night of the soul, the invitation, etc., etc., etc. For those of you who do not know, maybe we'll speak a little bit about that. So as you're sharing this, little Kristina, I love that you said a couple of times the importance of being an eternal student of life. Before we even go to, I know you mentioned a little bit of the map and everything. Before we even go into that mastery, that little Kristina, with her challenges, with her sorrows, with her upbringing, but the call that her soul, right? You use the word tethered, right? That we tethered our power to external things. And there's an incredible book called The Untethered Soul, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And you are able to bring people to that unnetherness, right? You are able to craft their stories in a way that you can translate them because of all of the things you have survived, thrived from, and gained mastery into. But let's talk about this very important topic that you repeat several times, about being an eternal student of life. I know this is a hype in the spiritual community, in leadership, in, motivational speech. Be an eternal student of life. Yeah, but let's dissect it. Let's tell people, what does that mean, right? Because I have not met a lot of people, Kristina, like, you and I speak often, and that goes through challenges or initiations in such a reverent way as you. And I believe that's coming from this path, right? This eternal student of life. What does that mean? What does that look like? And for yourself and those you serve in the here and now.
That's such a beautiful question. To me, there's a point of surrender. So, many of us can, we can love to learn, we can be curious, we can be students of so many things. And I feel like there's a difference between a student who just kind of perpetually seeks knowledge. So, I love books. I love to read. I love stories. There are many years of my journey that were just a lot about kind of diving into these philosophies, these worlds, these sacred texts, these higher teachings. But to me, that's only one piece of, it's one part of the equation. It's one variable, essentially. And the other piece, which, as we collect that knowledge as students, there's also this experiential piece, which is really living it, walking it, having the courage to, really surrender in this way that it's kind of a point of no return. And so I know for me, there was kind of a moment when I realized, like, this is a lifelong devotion. This is me surrendering to the divine, to God, to life, to creation in this way that allows it to move me, experientially. And so the knowledge is a piece, but that experience of really walking and living the story and the path and the initiations, to me, that's what leads us to the deeper wisdom. That's what leads us to this lifelong devotion. And it is, terms, words, the talk, there's a lot that I see, especially in social media and just in a lot of the kind of marketing of spirituality, which behind the scenes, I haven't experienced as many people really, truly living in that surrender and that, ability to continue to walk through the fire, to continue to allow things to die and be reborn in a way that, I feel is the heart of what it means to really be that eternal student, while also, sharing the teachings and being a conduit of that wisdom to share with others. To me, it just, I'm the student first in this way that, many people who come to me to guide them or support them in telling their stories, as I walk them through the wheel, I can tell that there are thresholds they've kind of skipped over or tried to kind of, not quite hit the full bottom on.
Oh,
And
Kristina, you know what? Let's talk about that. Let's do a pause. I know I'm not,
yeah,
it's not my intention to interrupt the flow here, but actually that is so important.
yeah,
I've learned in many modalities of mindset, of trauma healing, of shadow integration, of you name it, right? I've been through the whole, hell and heaven enchilada. But that is so important what you just said. That's what I believe makes you different from a lot of people that are publishing books, that are copywriting, that are telling, I'll write your book, I'll ghostwrite. You actually, those pieces that people miss is where the transformation resides.
yeah,
You cannot skip. The pain,
yeah,
because in the pain is hidden like the medicine, right?
yes.
So please expand a little bit more. What have you seen, and walk us through, and then you go back into your flow, but walk us back through what happens actually when people miss those parts, that
Yes.
they skip them and they become so fragmented, and then da-da-da, we have social media, right?
Yes.
We become so fragmented, and we have the race of ADD. I myself have supposedly I have attention deficit disorder. I call it, attention divinely discerned. Because I don't want to be losing my focus in the things that don't matter. Right?
Yes.
So tell us what you have seen. What is the cost of us keeping those things for our future, for our business, for our transformation and for those we serve?
That's such a powerful question. And it's interesting because I see behind the scenes of, a lot of these leaders who front facing, in the world or in their business or on social media are presenting one narrative. But then in our work behind the scenes, I'm seeing a very different story. And, what I find is that typically when there's let's say a gap between what's being lived and what's being told in terms of that story, it's because there is either, a step that was skipped or a threshold that was, sort of detoured in a certain way. And, with the work that I do with this, the story map, oftentimes the way I begin with people is I show them the map and then I ask them to locate themselves on the map. Where do you think you are in this process? And, because it's not linear, we can be in one part of the process in our business and in another part in our relationship. And, so it's very multidimensional, but typically what I find is that either people are mislocating kind of where they are on the map because, there's a conscious intention or desire they have about where they want to be creating from. And they're not being fully honest with themselves about what feels like it's no longer aligned, what feels like, because, the divine, the way that it moves us, it doesn't mean that if you've built a business, if you've, created a partnership or, a creative partnership or whatever it might be, whatever that comes from that true place of alignment. And, we can build incredible things. And yet when we hear the call that's no longer aligned, right? It has been a yes for so long, but we begin to see and feel the signs of this is no longer a yes. Doesn't matter how successful it is. Doesn't matter how many people know about it or how many followers you have. If you ignore those calls and those signs and you continue to just push through and sort of force something into that shape that was once aligned, that's really where I see people
Yes.
kind of loop. They get stuck in this just this deeper kind of discord with themselves because either they're not admitting it to themselves or whoever they're in co-creation with, or if they are admitting it, they've kind of given it to the mind or the ego in this way that is kind of justifying, okay, well, this isn't aligned anymore, but we can't just pull the plug. We couldn't just, pivot in the middle of this thing. We need to, so then it's this kind of 5-year plan of like, one day, we can find a way, right?
Kristina, bring the church into spirituality now podcast. Preach.
So, to me, it is about that deeper truth, with ourselves first and with God. And also once and that doesn't just mean like, look, there's a grounded and a way to do all of this in integrity. It doesn't mean you get the sign and then, you pull the plug on everything you've ever created tomorrow. But I do see, especially for people who have been through the process a few times and then have created a business or whatever it is from a place of more quote unquote spiritual alignment, right? Because that trap is much more subtle. And, once they feel that kind of divine command or that divine assignment and they build it, there's this underlying assumption of, well, this is what I do now, or this has been so successful. And this was the divine command at one time.